Hello, everyone, and welcome to True Words Aren't Beautiful for the Just Do Shit Philosophy series. Just a little bit of an update. As you can see, I now have a mic that my friend Maan just lent me for the show, so you can hear me much better. You don't need to use your headphones or your phone to hear me better compared to some old computer models. Just to let you know, I have not slept for about 36 hours or more now, so I'm a little bit out of it. And today I had an ugly cry this morning because I was just overwhelmed with life. And that's something I had to reflect on because I just was not very happy with my situation. It's why when I started this whole series, I was very, very distraught with my current circumstances in life, where I just felt nothing was working and losing my income sources, pining for an ex-girlfriend from a relationship that ended a couple of years ago, and while we were amicable for about a year until she suddenly disappeared for whatever reason. I just had this belief that I'm just a complete asshole and I'm useless, but then it did not supersede the philosophy of just doing shit, because every time I feel stuck, it's time to get moving and time to do stuff. Time to just do shit instead of making excuses, crying, feeling sorry for yourself, or getting caught in your thought patterns and your habit loops. And that's why part of the radical honesty is to look at your emotional state and look at your thought process to reflect. Whether you're looking at a journal entry and you feel dumb about a week or two later, or a year or two later, however long it takes you to develop and grow, to say, you know what, I was pretty stupid back then, or why would I feel so bad about that? And for me, sometimes it just takes the next day for me to look at an old journal entry and I say, wow, I was dumb yesterday and I have more insight today, and then tomorrow I'll probably feel the same about today. Just like I can look at a day where I do 2 vlogs for the Just Do Shit Philosophy series, where I record in the morning and I record in the evening. A lot has happened. But there's another reason for that that's more esoteric, and I'll touch upon that later. Anyway, so our focus today is the me right now concept, something that I took from an old Vimeo challenge when I was trying to do some independent films when I was doing videography about a decade ago, traveling around Southeast Asia for my old internship and my old job. And the prompt for me right now was just record whatever you're doing at the moment. And I went with that because I said, well, what is now? Now is just this minute, this second, this hour, this day. And so I just said me right now is me and my life and my headspace at that time. And that goes very well with the just do shit philosophy, which is to look at your headspace, look at and reflect. Because when you allow yourself to reflect on your previous decisions, on your mindset, your emotional state, understanding the why you did something, why you thought something, and how it led to either stupidity or success, this is still ultimately a good thing, because if you're willing to look at yourself with an open eye, and an open heart more importantly, you can be nice to yourself, and you can still be critical and allow yourself to appreciate the growth. And the inner critic, however, just gets in the way of being kind to ourselves. And the inner critic can sound a lot like shitty parents or bad toxic influences like toxic friends, bad ideas, bad communities, environments. Wherever that affects you with the negative mind space, those are not useful, but as long as you can recognize them eventually and grow out of it. This is why a second chance is part of the just do shit philosophy. You give yourself a second chance by allowing yourself to reflect with retrospect. So, key here is to remember that the just do shit philosophy is that it inspires you to be better as a result of your decision to not be limited by your habits, your fears, or your identity. Doing things, or rather doing shit alone, doesn't make you that much better. Sure, between someone who does nothing because they're making excuses, or they say, oh, I'm not good, or that's not useful, or that's not practical, and you, who just decide to try something new and experiment, explore, and discover. You make a crude drawing, burn something in the pot, you sing out of tune, or you dance and you look like the Star Wars kid in the old memes from the 2000s. You're already one step ahead, because you did something even if it wasn't very good, but you're already a lot different than someone who just has done absolutely jack shit. So, the time capsule, for me right now, it's a letter to your future self. It's an accountability record to validate and give yourself some feedback and impressions, and maybe share it with some friends. You reflect when looking back at yourself or looking at yourself now, so you can identify what you feel is missing, and show others more experience as a teacher or advanced practitioner to give you insight on where you are. Like, for example, when I show these videos of myself playing guitar to a friend who is a professional musician in Leeds, he can see that my transitions are better, he can see my comfort is better, more relaxation, and he can give me more encouraging feedback. But if I look at myself, I say, damn, I sound like shit, I can't sing, I'm too slow, I'm a bit sloppy. And yet the recording tells a very different story. So, you can record your first song, look at your very first page in your sketchbook, and cringe looking back. But the beauty of all that is it's the contrast in that growth. If you just see the finished product, you don't get to appreciate the process. One of the things that my coaches told me was, don't focus on the end goal, focus on the process. That is critical to just do shit. When you just do shit, your process, you take a process-oriented mindset as opposed to a result-oriented mindset. The results are happy accidents. That's why when you reach the top of the mountain, you keep climbing. Just like I mentioned before, just because someone awards you the title of a master does not mean you stop learning. Many times in martial arts tradition, it's when you start learning, when you attain a black belt. Now, going into some recent issues which led to my disillusionment and eventually my short breakdown, which I'm still recovering from, despite having the ability to choose better, be better, and just do shit, people are still inclined to do what they want, such as my desire to do seemingly fruitless endeavors with relationships, chasing my ex, career options, or investments. Often people really like to do what they feel works for them, and this is not necessarily from the gut. It's not a gut feeling, and it's not intuition. It's fear and convenience, and the results are bad habits. A case in point is, friends have told me to apply to various positions, such as for insurance, or writing for different publications that I never considered before because I didn't think I was good enough years ago. They believe that I lose nothing trying to do that, and yet, I resist. At the moment, I don't feel ready to do these because I'm addressing my emotional state, and I feel very drawn to this vlog practice. It just feels right for me right now. Sure, I know my value as a writer. I was charging $60 an hour, $60 an article when I would write blogs for my last gig, and I know what I can get as a ghostwriter. I know what I've been paid by Medium when I write my fiction. I don't need to go on Fiverr or Upwork and then undercut a lot of people just to get 5-star ratings and then charge up the ass for what I'm really worth. That's not really my thing, and I'm not avoiding this because I don't want to do that shit. I'm avoiding that because right now what feels right is doing this series and exploring, and that's part of my therapy, part of my emotional healing through this vulnerability and experimentation, just trying something new and recreating Johnny C right now. So to recognize whether your actions and decisions are following the just do shit philosophy, you need to ask if you are basing your decisions off of fear, convenience, and habit versus purpose, intuition, and exploration. I think of this in a couple of examples here. There's a line from my favorite game from Yakuza 0, where Kiryu, the protagonist, says that his life follows a very simple rule: whether he loves something or not. Very, very similar to my badass best friend in Korea who's always asking me about what I'm doing. Are you still having fun? Are you having fun? And if I'm not having fun, he says, so why the hell are you still doing it? Then there was also my ex Dana, who said that she didn't need a rhyme or reason. She just said it felt right to be with me and pursue things even when I was avoidant back then. So, anyway, I have coached a few people who returned to bad habits, bad relationships, and bad situations because it was comfortable and familiar, and they justified that it has always worked for them. And yet they're getting into fights, they are getting sick, they're miserable, they're eating like crap, and they still can't seem to grasp the basics of whether it's the martial arts or yoga I teach them, or basic philosophies, basic life skills, and sadly, even for some grown-ass people, basic manners and people skills. They're frightened by something different and new, even when it's demonstrated and proven that it's better. This is also the identity question where they say, well, that's just me, that's who I am. I say, all right, but then why are you miserable? This reminds me of an old Far Side cartoon of a guy pushing a door that has a sign that reads, pull. Yeah, push, but the door says pull. So sometimes people need to keep repeating the same mistake until they learn their lesson, and oftentimes it's not that they don't see, but they refuse to see and get defensive when it's shown. Contrasting that is Calvin and Hobbes. One of my favorite comic strips is where Calvin's dad is always telling Calvin to do something because it builds character, and then one day Calvin steals his glasses, slicks back his hair, imitates his father's voice, and says, Calvin, go do something miserable. It builds character. That's good for you. And his mom is laughing her ass off on the floor because the voice is absolutely perfect. Now, relating that to this, just because you're willing to be miserable to get what you want doesn't mean you have to be miserable. Yeah, there is a key question where you have to ask, what are you willing to do to get what you want? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to suffer? You can still have fun when you do this, though. You can grind and grind and grind, but you have to, again, focus on the process, not the end result. So, another example of the me right now application is when I was arguing with Dana about the main thing there that killed our relationship was during the pandemic lockdown. The stress led me to think about how I felt like a prisoner in an unhappy relationship since my needs weren't being met, particularly emotional needs and sexual needs. Wasn't getting a lot of affection, and in turn, I recognized that I was resentful and didn't recognize what she actually did was part of her love language. Service rather than touch or words of affirmation. So pay attention there to love language. That's a framework. If we take the me right now approach, then looking back with the eyes I have now, I can say, shit, I was not thinking about love languages. I was too caught up in my emotional bullshit. But then when you learn new frameworks, or someone comes in and says, well, what about your attachment style? And I said, attachment style? What's that? Then that adds more insight because I say, oh no, now that makes sense. Yeah, we might know our Myers-Briggs personalities or our astrology, but we didn't know our attachment styles and we didn't appreciate or accept each other's love languages. So when I added attachment style to the analysis of looking back, I said, oh shit, I should have realized I'm an anxious guy and I want to resolve things and just take control, but the more you try to control something, the more you push it away. And at the same time, when you have someone like Dana who has a avoidant attachment style, she says, give me space and let me do what I need to do and we'll come back to this. So anxious, want to just go, go, go and fix it right now and resolve it to be at peace. Avoidant says, let me come back to you when I'm at peace, then we'll resolve this. Not very good, and also a very common relationship conflict, whether it's social, for friends or families, particularly with parents, and especially for romance. So, the Me Right Now framework requires you to be honest about what you have and what you know at that moment. at the moment, I didn't know, which is why, even though I've been beating myself up for the past week about wishing I had all these frameworks back then to salvage the relationship, and then we would have been on our way to celebrating a 6-year anniversary soon, I also have to say I wouldn't have gone out and explored had we not split. So, chicken or the egg? For me, I do actually love to have omelets with chicken inside them, so go figure. And then you have okonomiyaki, which is made out of eggs, and you have some chicken as the meat you can put there. At least my okonomiyaki has a couple of eggs in it. Some people only use one. So, when you honestly look at yourself and what you have or what you don't have, it's hard to recognize what you do have because of that inner critic that paralyzes you, as I mentioned earlier. The inner critic usually is the voice, the negative influence, or the negative voice we've talked about, but it's just one of many voices there. If you're constantly giving yourself negative feedback, you're not going to grow. That's also what makes this the wrong process. If all you do are see negatives, you're not going to grow because you're constantly going to think you need to fix yourself. And here I am just saying, yeah, I still need to get out of that mindset, which I've had the past few days, when I look at myself as a massive fuck up, as someone who doesn't know anything, and maybe I deserve a lot of my struggles and hurt right now. The me right now approach says, okay, Johnny, let's look at what you do have. Your drawing has improved significantly since January. Your cooking has improved massively to the point people prefer to come here instead of going to restaurants. You can hear an audible difference in your guitar play, and your hands are more dexterous as well. It's just that in the moment you don't feel good, but others on the outside can validate and tell you, especially when they actually have the skills to give you qualified critique versus you just being too hard on yourself. If I say, man, I have nothing right now, I'm about to turn 40 in about a week and a couple of days, and I've achieved nothing in life, and I say, well, okay, so I've lived in 15 countries, I've worked in multiple NGOs, I've made a difference in a number of people's lives, I have a college degree from UCLA, speak a few languages, even if Tagalog is not one of them, and I'm not necessarily fluent. And my last video, which talked about who is Johnny C, mentioned a lot of the positive feedback, and yet what I'm focused on is how I screwed up in my relationship with Dana, where I screwed up in life because my financial situation is not ideal. Yet, looking around me, I am in a very good place in this particular condominium right now, and the surrounding neighborhood. So, it's very hard to appreciate what you do have when you're so focused on the next upgrade. Me right now tells you when you're being a whiny little bitch and when you are giving yourself way more credit than you deserve. So, focus on the process, use the me right now, whether it's just a written journal or a video log, to hold yourself accountable and reflect and grow. Alright, thanks again, see you in the next video.